Midnight pressed down on the town of Dry Creek like a shroud. The streets were empty, save for the slow sway of lanterns in the breeze and the restless sigh of dust curling along the ground. Even the horses in the hitching post stood still, their ears pricked as if they, too, waited for something to break the silence. An old voice, half memory, half confession, might have said, "When a man's name is dragged through the mud, sometimes all he's got left is the sound of his own heartbeat." Elias Crow returned under that silence. He rode in weary, his hat pulled low, his coat ragged from too many nights against the desert wind. His eyes, gray, storm-dark, spoke of places he'd been and men he'd buried. Once, his name had meant loyalty, a rider who never turned his back. Now, whispers followed him like shadows. "That's the one," a woman murmured as she drew her child inside. "Crow," a man spat into the dirt. "The coward. The one who left his brothers to die." The saloon was no warmer. Elias stepped through its doors and ordered only water. The laughter fell quiet. Cards still mid-game. He felt their judgment more than the heat of the whiskey lamps. His scarred hand shook as he lifted the glass, though not from fear. Fear had left him years ago. This tremor was older, born from shame he could not wash clean. From the corner, Clara Halloway played her piano soft, her hair pinned loosely, eyes lowered though they missed nothing. She was a woman marked herself, cast aside after scandal clung to her name like burrs in fabric. She knew how silence could wound sharper than words. Her song faltered just slightly when Elias's hand trembled, then steadied again, softer now, as if to carry him through. But another pair of eyes watched from the shadows. Jedediah Pike, once Elias's brother in arms, now his loudest accuser. He leaned back in his chair with that familiar smile, the one that charmed in daylight but curdled into poison at night. He whispered his lies into eager ears, feeding the crowd the story they longed to believe, that Elias had betrayed, abandoned, and chosen gold over blood. Elias rose, said nothing, and walked past them all. He had learned silence was the only shield left to him. Yet silence cuts, too, when the town sheriff refuses to listen. Sheriff Alden Graves met him in the street that afternoon, shaking his head with weary eyes. "Your word's worth less than dust against Pike's," he said. "Truth don't carry weight when no one's willing to believe it." So Elias kept moving, even as the town's whispers curled around him. He lifted an old drunk from the gutter when boys mocked him, brushed the man off, gave him water. Later, he pressed his last coin into the hand of a widow at the bakery, unnoticed by most, except Clara, watching from her window. She did not speak to him, not yet, but the sight of such small mercy softened something inside her. Evening fell, and Jedediah cornered him in front of the crowd. "You'll face me," Jed drawled, voice sharp as broken glass. "Midnight, you or me. Let's see who carries truth in his bones." The town leaned closer, hungry. Men grinned at the promise of blood. Women whispered, children peered wide-eyed. Elias did not answer, not with words. He simply lowered his gaze, his silence the only agreement Pike needed. Later, in the quiet of the livery stable, Clara appeared with a lantern. She didn't speak. She only set it down near his weary horse, the flame glowing steady in the dark. Elias, brushing dust from the animal's mane, paused. His voice was low, as if spoken to no one at all. "They see a ghost, not a man." The air smelled of hay and leather. The lantern light flickered against the wooden beams. Clara didn't answer, but her presence lingered, a quiet kind of trust. Two souls scarred by judgment, bound in silence rather than words. Midnight loomed. Elias walked alone through the empty street, the moon climbing higher, shadows stretching long. His boots echoed, and the windows stayed dark though he felt the whole town breathing behind their shutters. An old voice, weathered and weary, whispered through the night. "A man can be shot for his sins, or for the lies others tell in his name. But midnight makes no distinction." Elias lowered his head in quiet acceptance. The hour of reckoning drew near. The night came heavy, and the town gathered as if drawn by some cruel festival. Dry Creek had not seen such excitement in years. Children balanced on fence rails, wide-eyed. Men wagered coins and whiskey bottles with eager grins. Women whispered in sharp tones of fear and fascination. The air carried the scent of dust, sweat, and lantern oil. Above it all, the church bell tolled once, marking midnight, each note echoing like a hammer against the chest. Jedediah Pike walked into the street first, his boots striking hard against the earth, his coat swinging with the swagger of a man who believed the night already belonged to him. He turned slow circles, letting the crowd feed off his performance. "He left us to rot," Jed shouted, voice cutting through the hush. "Abandon his brothers for gold, for greed. He'll die tonight, and the West will be cleaner for it." The crowd murmured, nodding, eager to believe. Then Elias Crow stepped from the shadows. No grand entrance, no swagger. His coat was frayed, his hat bent by wind and weather. He looked not like a hero or villain, but like a man worn thin, his shoulders heavy with years of dust and silence. Clara watched from the saloon doorway, her hands clutching the edge of the piano, though she dared not play. Her heart struck harder than any bell, yet she knew her presence alone had to be enough. The street fell into a hush. Jed grinned, tilting his head. "Ain't got no honor left to die for, Elias." Elias's voice was soft, carrying more weight for its quietness. "Honor ain't given by a town, Jed. It's carried in a man's bones." The crowd stilled. Even the wind seemed to pause. Dust swirled in slow circles at their feet. Fingers hovered above pistols. Jed's face twisted, fury swelling in his chest. His hand moved first, wild, desperate. A shot cracked, ricocheting into the night, missing its mark. Smoke curled upward like the breath of the devil. Elias didn't rush. His hand moved calm, deliberate, as if years had built to this single moment. He fired once, just once. Jed's body jolted, eyes wide in disbelief, before he fell into the dust that had carried so many lies. The silence that followed was almost holy, so deep the whole town seemed to stop breathing. Elias stood still, gun lowered, no triumph in his face. He watched the blood spread into the earth and holstered his weapon as though it had never left its place. Sheriff Alden Graves stepped forward, his voice shaken. He lied. Pike lied. Twisted you into the villain to keep himself clean. His words trembled into the night, and the crowd, once so eager for Elias's blood, now shifted uneasily. Guilt crept over them like the chill of a cold wind. Elias knelt by Jed's body. With steady hands, he closed the man's eyes. No hatred, no gloating, just a quiet respect for the friend who once was, now lost to pride and poison. Clara stepped from the saloon at last, moving slowly across the dust. She reached him, placed a hand gently on his sleeve. Not a word passed between them. She gave only touch, the kind of touch that said, "I see you. I believe you. You are not alone." The town began to drift away, shame heavy on their backs. Bets forgotten, whispers fading, they returned to their homes with a silence heavier than their gossip had ever been. The night no longer belonged to Jedediah's lies. It belonged to the man who stood tall, without cruelty, who carried his dignity through dust and betrayal. Elias did not linger. He rose, adjusted his coat, and walked toward his horse. Clara stayed behind, lantern in her hand, the flame steady as though meant to light his path. He looked back only once, meeting her eyes, a silent promise shared in that brief exchange, two outcasts finding a measure of home in each other's presence. He mounted his horse and rode into the horizon, the hush of the town shrinking behind him. Midnight lay broken at his back, and the first pale stroke of dawn painted the edge of the sky. An old voice lingered in the quiet, speaking not just of Elias, but of every man and woman scarred by judgment, crushed by lies. A man can lose his name, his place, his kin, but if he carries grace in the hollow of his chest, even betrayal cannot strip him of his soul. Remember this, dear listener. Sometimes the fiercest battles are fought not with bullets, but with the quiet dignity of standing tall when the world calls you nothing. And so Elias Crow disappeared into the sunrise, leaving behind not victory, not defeat, but a lesson carved in dust and blood, that mercy, even at midnight, is a choice a man makes for himself.